a listener had to hear your brand 7 times before they could have any type of recall. Well, now the stakes are worse because there's so much noise out there. It's all over the place, and no two people take the same journey. Some people come in on search, some people come in email or social media, but you want them to land at your website ultimately. But with all the noise that's out there, it now takes 14 or 15 touches or people to see your brand or your website before they can recall that and start building that trust and that authority. That's just the game.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Reanimated Stories. My name is Roger, your host, and today I am joined by Kevin. Kevin and I have a pretty cool relationship. It's funny, we were introduced online we were introduced online and we actually live in the same area. So we both live in Central Texas. So we live pretty close to each other in the greater Austin area. And they were like, hey, you should meet this person. They actually live close by. And I said, oh, okay, cool. We had a conversation. Months later, we both went to this in-person workshop and somebody in the group, I didn't even recognize Kevin. Somebody in the group said to Kevin, hey, you should go chat with Roger. You guys might have a little bit of synergy. Kevin walks up to me and says, hey, I'm Kevin Vaughan. And we should, and I said, oh, Kevin, we've talked, I think. I was like, cause I know a Kevin. And so we met each other by somebody online and then through the networking group that we're part of, and we're actually live close by each other. And then we met each other again. So Kevin, great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you.
Good to see you again,
Yeah.
and thank you for that recap because it's one of those things I lose track of things, and I
Yeah.
forgot because I remember running into you at the local event, but I
Yeah.
could not remember the introduction coming from the online community
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we're part of, which I've since joined, and we chatted about that. But yeah, it's just that short introductions led to some interesting conversations.
It
So thank you
has.
for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah. And then we
I
had
think
another conversation. We're like, hey, let's meet at the coffee shop. And so I was like, cool. Yeah, definitely. We were going to do it for like 30 minutes. And like 3 hours later, I was like, hey, Kevin, I got to go home, man. I got to eat some dinner, man. So that was pretty cool. Well, Kevin, that was an extremely long introduction. I felt like that was a long answer to a short question on my part. Kevin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you do and just who you are?
so. I'm Kevin Vaughan, and my company is KTV Digital, and we are really an optimization visibility specialist. And we have really rooted ourselves into AI visibility because, what we've discussed, what's led to our 3-hour discussion is how one of the things that's changed online is human behavior. That's what AI has brought to the table. Besides all the technical stuff everybody talks about, right? It's, people approach the internet differently now. They're not Googling things the way they used to. They're going to these, AI engines or AI summaries first, kind of having a conversation. And it's all about showing up there so you can be part of those touch points along with everything else downstream. And not to like unpack everything like early in the game, but what I do is help companies be found in AI search and then take those educated buyers that are more sales ready and convert them into customers. So we help with conversion as well.
Yeah, that is such a big thing now. I mean, people are always talking, they're talking about AI, right? And like you had mentioned, it's kind of on the technical side. So maybe it's automation, maybe it's on helping, look at an app or something like that. But, obviously in our circles, right, people are now, they're searching everywhere now, and AI has become a huge part of that. And we know even on Google, you got AI overviews. And so being found outside of Google is extremely important. So kind of walk us through that. And let me kind of throw a softball question at you. I didn't prepare Kevin for this, but there's a lot of talk, obviously, SEO, and this is part of that. But you have AEO, right? People, they're trying to come out with all these different, AEO, GEO, BINGO, right? Everybody's got some sort of,
Right.
something for it. But let me ask you a question. And because I had been approached by this and some become across, but just curious on your thoughts about it. So we hear a lot about AEO and GEO, but would you say that there is a distinction between that, or would you say that it's the same thing, just different kind of letters? And for those that aren't sure, there's typically AEO stands for Answer Engine Optimization, and GEO stands for Generative Engine Optimization.
Optimization.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot to unpack there, Roger.
Yeah.
It's not as complicated as it sounds, and I actually spent a lot of time learning about this and thinking about this and the best way to communicate this. And they are different. All three of those things are different. I'll expand on that, but I think where a lot of folks get derailed is they think it's either or, right?
Mm.
Or it's, it's like, if I don't need to do SEO anymore, I need to do this other thing. The way I explain it, think about it like a Venn diagram. All right. So we have three circles that all overlap. Well, where they converge, that's visibility.
Mm.
So really, as a base is SEO. And that really hasn't gone away. Those principles still exist. And you have to have, good technical SEO and site speed and, good architecture and things like that. And you still have to optimize for keywords. But once you get into the AI space, it's not so much about keywords, because you don't want to just land up in a wall of links and have people choose their own adventure anymore. AI is serving up the answer. So I've heard about it put this way. This is a great example. So if you say you go into a shoe store, right? And in the back wall is just full of shoes. Now they have them categorized, they have them, different sizes, different styles, different brands, but you still have to go search through all that by yourself, even though it's organized. Well, that's an old Google search. What AI's done is brought a salesman into the room, and you go, well, I'm a middle-aged guy and I want to run, but I got knee problems, and then so you give it criteria and it goes, okay, these are the shoes you want.
Mm.
So that's what AI is doing, is serving up that answer. So the difference between AEO and GEO is, like, for instance, if you go to Google now and you type in whatever you're looking for, you get a summarized answer. That's an answer engine. That's Google coming back, distilling the information and giving you an answer in that summarized form. And you have the option to click continue on AI, expand that window, and continue the conversation, which is what's great about AI, because you can ask follow-up questions and you can go further down that buyer's journey all by yourself without having to do anything on a website. You're doing that, with the tool itself. Now, generative engine is more like what we think about Chat GPT or Gemini, or, because those are generating the answers. They're kind of doing the same thing as an answer engine, but they're going through the data, right? And they are presenting an answer, but usually rather than just one, it kind of gives you a short list. So, that's what I'm seeing now is, if you're looking for, say, a plumber, right, in the area, who are the best plumbers, who's got the best reviews, all these like trust signals that you want to do as an SEO practice. But the AI engines are gathering that information and presenting that as a short list. And way back in the day, early in my life, I worked in the radio industry. So, I learned back then, and this is in the 90s, that a listener had to hear your brand 7 times before they could have any type of recall, right? Well, now the stakes are worse because there's so much noise out there. There's so many different channels, and the path that buyers take is not linear. It's scattered. It's all over the place, and no two people take the same journey. Some people come in on search, some people come in email or social media, but you want them to land at your website ultimately. But it's just the path that they're taking to get there. But with all the noise that's out there, it now takes 14 or 15 touches or people to see your brand or your website before they can recall that and start building that trust and that authority. That's just the game. So, with the AI portion of this, it's just getting seen more and getting seen early in the process because, again, human behavior is what has really been altered through this process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that that's great. Yeah, because right there with you. I love that analogy right there that you did at the very beginning about like the shoes. So because yeah, it's like Google will give you a list of answers basically, and then you have to kind of go and look at it yourself versus like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. They'll actually, give or they'll actually like look up the answer, kind of they'll do that for you as long as you give them those parameters. And I liked how you mentioned like with the AI overviews, it's like, well, hey, now we're going to bring in a salesman to the front of the Google store, if you will, right? And say, like, well,
Yep.
these are the ones that you should let me kind of summarize this for you. And they'll still give you that option, but there's obviously we're in zero click era now, right? Where they'll just usually give you that answer. And I think that that's really, I think that that's really important to have that distinction, because I think that sometimes people think like, well, SEO and AEO and GEO, they're all kind of the same, and they all, it's just people are arguing over this. And I think kind of having that distinction is extremely important, because like you said, people don't come in the same way anymore. It could be that maybe they saw an ad which then took them to a landing page, or they were searching for something and then they, clicked on your link, or there's all these different things in how they're coming in. And so I think a really important, question is like when somebody Googles you, or when somebody looks you up, or is asking a question, how are you showing up? And, I think that that's an extremely important question to ask. How are you? So well, actually, before I get into that question, can go ahead and explain like, what do you do with KTV Digital, and like, how do you help them become more visible? Because I love that idea of that, or not the idea, your analogy of the Venn diagram, the visibility. How do you help companies show up more in AI?
Well, it's not a one size fits all solution. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very bespoke and tailored to the case. So, with anything else in our roles as consultants, I mean, it starts off with discovery, right? So we have to have a conversation with the customer, and where, let them know where they're at and see where they want to go. And then we start like kind of looking at different factors and metrics. And I have a whole like tech stack full of tools that I can go and look at some analytics. In fact, I've actually become a partner now for a platform called Gumshoe, and it does a really deep AI analysis. And what's really cool about it is it breaks down by persona. And then
Wow.
so it'll go through your website and kind of figure out who your different personas are that you sell to, but then you can edit those, as you see fit, or you can add, even, add your own. So one thing to think about, and as a website guy, you'll get this. It's always been about keywords. I mean, that was the Google game forever. It's like, okay, we want to rank for this keyword, and we want to be on the top of the list. Well, now, I mean, the keyword thing is still important because that's kind of like where things are rooted.
Mhm.
But instead of optimizing for keywords, we're now with AI optimizing for prompts. So
Yeah.
you have to figure out the questions that people are asking, the information that they want as an inquisitive prospect or buyer, and then you need to put that information on your website. And you can do it on a web page, a landing page, articles or blogs, if you want to call it that, are still very effective in doing that. And there's some technical stuff, want all your schema
Hmm.
markup on the back end to be
Yeah.
tight, but you need good page architecture, you need good, headings, subheadings. And when you understand how AI is training itself. So that's another thing. So it used to be we want to be optimized and indexed for Google, right?
Yeah.
Well, now it's about training the AI. So the AI knows about you, and the way that AIs collect data, they do it in chunks. So they'll just take your wall of text and split it up into these chunks because it's predictive. That's
Yeah.
how it fills in the blanks. It goes, okay, well, here's a word chunk. This is probably the next word they'll come
Yeah.
into play. So it just fills in the blanks that way. So as you're putting the information on your web page to answer the curiosity of the visitor, right? You do it in such a way that it's easy. It's easy for humans to understand, and it's skimmable. But at the same time, you're also writing it to train the AI so it can chunkify, if that's a word, chunkify your data to be able to present that back in the form of an answer.
Yeah.
So there's some tactical aspects to it, but a lot of this is taking old content, making it fresh, and then adding these new factors to the page that give people a leg up to be visible in AI. So that's what I do. I mean, we really start with discovery, see what they have, see, whether we need to add new content, or a lot of times just taking a bunch of old stuff, making it fresh and making it better and making it more adaptable for the new way people are interacting online.
Yeah, one of the things that I always tell clients is like, all right, what are 5 to 10 questions that people are always asking you, right? And because most of the time, if they're shopping around, right, it doesn't matter what they are, roofers, insurance, blah blah blah, whatever. They're typically going to start asking questions. And if you talk to, maybe 5 people in that same industry, well, what are some questions that that typically your clients or prospects are asking you? Well, most likely, a lot of them are gonna have a lot of overlap. It may be worded slightly differently, but you know what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna have the same question. So I'm always, asking my clients, what are questions that people are always asking you? Like, and what are they asking you? And then how are you answering that? And how are you displaying that? How are you showing that, like, on your website? And I think that that's extremely important. Like what you just said, it's sometimes it's taking older content and then kind of reformatting that and helping people, think about how we're answering that question. And yeah, I think that that's really great. With AI, it's funny. One of the questions, that I sometimes ask is like, well, how has AI changed, this or something like that? But obviously, your whole business is AI. So it's a little harder to ask that question. But, with AI, when you had said earlier, SEO still has a good foundation, what are some things that you see that people just want to they're like, "Hey, I just want to be found on AI," or, "I just want to be found on this," or what are some things that you think that sometimes people skip that it's like, "Well, I know you want this, like what I offer or whatever, but you're not doing this, and this needs to be done first." What are some things that you sometimes see with that?
That's a tough question to answer. Because in a way, I feel like I'm really early to a lot of this,
Yeah.
right?
No,
So
yeah.
in our networking groups, it's the response I get from folks when I have those conversations, networking or with prospects or with my customers, it's often compelling, and they go, "Wow, I never thought about it that way."
Yeah.
But the need is like increasing every day.
Yeah.
And where this has really come to fruition, like one of my recent clients that I'm working with right now does commercial refrigeration. And he on his own went out and was trying to search on ChatGPT to see if he'd show up. Now, there wasn't much of a website at the time. It's
Yeah.
since been improved, but the rub was that, not only was he not showing up, but companies that weren't necessarily qualified to do the work were showing up.
Mm.
So, like a lot of residential HVAC, well, that's not commercial refrigeration,
No,
right?
not at
That's
all.
That's a completely different thing. So that kinda gets into the hallucination aspect
Mm.
of it because, the AI is just gonna spit out what it thinks is the answer. And then that's where it's up to you as the owner of a website to have the right information to train the AI to find you and recommend you. So, I mean, that a lot of that is, I guess, in a nutshell, it's the fear of missing out. It's like, why am I not there? How come I'm not showing up? And then also, just showing people how traditional search has fallen quite a bit because people are starting their research and exploration on the AI engines. But the caveat to that is, in a lot of cases, and I've seen this myself, where sometimes the website conversions have gone up, even though the traffic has gone down, because that means that you're getting better quality traffic to the website. People are kind of pre-training themselves through the AI. And so by the time they end up on your website, they're legit and they're ready to buy the item or schedule the appointment, whatever the call to action is.
Yeah. Well, no, I think, it's funny. You're like, this might be a hard question to answer, but I think you answered that really well. And I think that one of the things that I think a lot of people sometimes miss is just like you said, well, there's not a lot of signals. And I think that really at the end of the day, I, it's sort of like one of those things like where the 90s, right? We need to have our website, right? So everybody has a website, right? But then all of a sudden social media came and everybody was like, oh, all we need is social media, So it's like the pendulum swing the other way. And then it kind of started to come back, okay, well, maybe we do kind of need our website, right? And then, then AI came and it's like, oh, well, all we need is our AI and all this sort of stuff. And just from what I've seen, that kind of seems to be what it is. And people are like, well, no, so level-headed people like yourself, just like you had said, well, there's not a lot of signals coming from the website because it's like, well, where do you think that a lot of this stuff is coming from, right? It's coming from your website, but it's also coming like, what are you doing outside of your website? Because that's what I like to tell people sometimes. I'm like, well, what are you doing outside of your website? Like even before people get to your website, someone wants to Google you. What's going to show up and how's it going to help your business? And so I think that's really important factor. And I think when people hear like, oh, okay, my website is a signal, they think keywords, right? And it's like, well, before it was like, let's just stuff as many keywords as we can into the website, right? But now it's like, now you have to present your content. Now you have to present your website in a different format, not in a different like format of like a website, but in how you are presenting that. So it's not just like, Kevin is a commercial real estate investor who, as a commercial real estate investor of 20 years, has done commercial real estate investing for many companies. You know what I'm saying? It's how are you answering those questions and how are you sending those signals, blogs, images, schema? Like, how are you sending that there? And I think that that's a really important thing that I think sometimes people just kind of miss that they're just kind of like, I just need to be found, right? And even when they talk to me about SEO, they're like, well, I just, I'm not showing up in local searches. And, when I look at their Google business profile, it's like, well, okay, you've maybe done like 20 or 30% right. And so now it's optimizing that and thinking through that, So I think that was great for people to think through. If someone was like, hey, you know what, Kevin, that sounds really interesting. I'm not sure I need to be on AI, but I do want to kind of explore that opportunity. What are some of the questions that they should probably think about before they started to engage with you, or if they were thinking about engaging with you? What are some things that they should probably think about?
Well, one thing that I've built, it's a free resource. It's a free AI visibility search and score. In fact, it's called Search Score. And I can give you the URL for that, but or basically you just go to my webpage and it's the first button right there. But you drop in your website, name of your business. You can put a local location if you want. You don't have to, and it will give you feedback and let you know how you rank or how you are optimized for chat GPT. So it's OpenAI. So this is all like backend APIs that it's
Yeah,
looking at those models. But OpenAI, Gemini, and Perplexity. And then it takes an aggregate of those three engines and it goes, here you go. And it gives you your scores and gives you some actionable insights. So that's a good place to start just to, without spending any money, just kind of see what that looks like. It also looks at like local presence. So like you're talking about Google Business Profile, which is still, vital, especially for local businesses. So you do get a little bit of credit for that if you're looking for a local score. But the way that the algorithm is put together, it gives you a composite score and then gives you those breakdowns, gives you some examples on some prompts that you can start like searching on yourself for, what you do, and gives you some actionable insights that, if somebody even wants to DIY that, they could start there.
that's cool. Yeah, no, I've used the tool and it's very useful. It's really cool. So let me ask you a question. And this is, and I'm just curious. So I would assume, and I've seen at least one or so, well, maybe two of them start to do it. How do you see this coming into play? Some, you know, as like an SEO agency or something like that? Because I'm not sure, I'm not 100% sure like a business owner would necessarily be like have like a subscription to like Ahrefs or SEMrush or anything like that. But I assume that some of these, we'll call them the big dogs, right? Or are probably going to start implementing this AI search, AI optimization into their platforms. What are some ways that is going to differentiate some kind of generic big dog corporate, HREFs. I'm not trying to call them out or anything like that. They were the first ones that came to my mind
Yeah.
versus like
Yeah.
what you're doing like on a local level and all that.
Well, look, those tools are great. I mean, you can, Ahrefs or SEMrush or SEMrush, whatever you want to call it. They're very powerful, deep tools. Hey, they're expensive. They're
Extremely.
not they're not cheap. And, I don't know the cost of them right offhand, but if you want the AI part of that, I mean, you're looking at several $100s a
Yeah.
month just to subscribe to that, just to get the reports. You There's nothing actionable about that. So that's great. That's great if you're a tech savvy owner and you get under the hood and you take care of your own website. If you have the time, if you have the chops to do that, there's a lot of data you can get from there. But if you don't know, you need the Rosetta Stone because none of
Yeah.
it makes sense to the untrained person. So I help out, small to medium-sized businesses that they're focused on the operation of their company, and they're like, "We need better results." And then so, what I do and what you do is understand that data, right? So we
Yeah.
can look at that and this goes way back to my radio career where, data can tell a story, right? You can look at trends and you can look at gaps and different signals within the data set and figure out some plans of action. So whether that's going to be on the traditional SEO side or more in line. And again, all of this stuff is related. So it's not SEO or AEO or
Yep.
whatever. And then wait a week, there'll be a new acronym that comes out.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is related. It's three different bubbles in the Venn diagram. They all touch each other. So, they all influence one another, but each one requires a little different tweak.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it's a sum of all the parts.
Yeah. And refs, Semrush, please don't come after me. I was just using you guys as an example. Yeah. No, I think that.
They're
Yeah.
great platform.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
nothing against those. It's
Yeah.
just it's what's the user, how much of that do they understand? I
Yeah.
mean, look, if somebody wants to sign up to that, those are wonderful services and they give you a ton of information. You got to learn how to do it and you got to figure it out. And
Yeah.
does everybody have the bandwidth to do that?
Yeah.
If you don't, you bring in somebody like us and we handle that for them and
Yeah.
make the changes and improve the results.
Yeah. No, I think that that's great. Yeah, I think that it's important. It's one thing, like you said, like to know the data, but like, what are you going to do with that? So I think that that's really
Yeah.
important. Well, Kevin, it has been a pleasure to have you today, and I hope that my listeners have gotten some great information from that. If they were looking to connect with you, where can they find you online?
So I'm on LinkedIn. It's super easy to find. The company is KTV Digital. So those are my initials, KTV Digital. So the website's ktvdigital.com. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I have a AI inspired newsletter that publishes every couple weeks, and that's really gotten some good traction. There's a lot of people, the readership's very good on that. So I work very hard to put forth very valuable and usable information, that can help people out. So, at the end of the day, we want to serve other people. We want to help them. We want to, elevate their position and there's a lot of room out there. There's
Yeah.
a lot of improvements that brands pretty much across the board can make to improve their position and how they rank online on any platform.
I think that that's really crucial what you just said. I provide a lot of value. I've read some of your newsletters, and I think that's important. You have to provide that value. I think sometimes we just kind of like jump into, okay, well, I need to do SEO, I need a website, I need to do a blog, I need to do an email, something, right? Like they're like something in marketing. I just need to get my brand out more. I need to be visible more. Well, part of that, a huge part of that visibility is what sort of value are you providing for those people that are watching, listening, reading, going to your website, right? What is that value? And I think that that's a huge part. And you model that not just in how you help the clients, but also how you conduct your business and how you conduct yourself as well. So I see that. So I appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you. That's
much.
very kind of you.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, you do a great job. Kevin, I really appreciate you coming up. See, I did it again. I keep doing that. Every time I have a guest, I'm like, hey, thanks for coming out. This is not in person. This is all yeah, we're virtual. Yeah. So Kevin, thanks so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Roger, thanks for having me, man. Always a pleasure.